It will be interesting for everyone to talk, but the fact that I have chosen the first period, the 20-day period of 2026, I think will break all the records in terms of impression that the year 2025 has left behind. And today, I hope, we will talk about this in detail. But first of all, I would like to congratulate you on the upcoming new year, on Christmas, and wish you good health, success in your professional career, and, of course, in your personal affairs. I will try to make my introductory remarks as short as possible. Just recently, at the big press conference on December 19th, President Putin spoke in great detail on the issues of international policy, including, of course, the interpolitical issues of the Russian Federation. And 5 days ago, on January 15th, at the ceremony of handing over the Venerable Graham, he also paid close attention to international affairs, for obvious reasons. I have already mentioned how vigorous this year has been. We have witnessed unprecedented events, a brutal armed invasion of the United States of Venezuela, with dozens of killed and wounded, witnesses of the seizure and withdrawal of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife from the country. At the same time, we have seen threats to Cuba, to other Latin American and Caribbean countries, and of course, deep concerns are raised by the outright declared attempts of foreign forces to destabilize the interpolitical situation in Iran. In particular, such an activist of modernity as Kaya Kallas has recently stated that by supporting protests, the international community, vis-à-vis the European Union, seeks to change the regime in this country. I am not talking about the aspiration of most Western countries to continue using the Kiev regime for armed confrontation with Russia. The goal of strategic defeat does not sound so clear to us, but nevertheless, it remains in the minds and plans of European leaders. What is the worth of Chancellor Merz's argument that the German army should once again become the strongest in Europe? Mr. Merz has also recently said that it is impossible to allow Russia to get what it wants in Ukraine because it would be a sign of Hitler's pacification. What do you think of this statement? Few people paid attention to it, but it would be worth it. Of course, we remember and should not forget what the German leadership's self-confidence has led to several times in history. Speaking of the Second World War, for obvious reasons we cannot but mention it, I would like to point out that talks about changing the constitution in Japan have become more active, not only in terms of increasing the offensive military potential, but also in terms of reconsidering the non-nuclear status of this country. This is already being openly discussed. It is clear that we are witnessing such profound shifts in the world order. It is clear that the West, which has been actively opposing international law for the last 10 years or even more, has introduced a concept of the world order based on the rules in its original reading. It is clear that now this term has gone out of fashion All Western European countries are trying to understand what is going on in the world in the context of the line announced by President Trump, which probably fits into the world order based on the rules. But the rules are not written by a collective West, but by one representative. This is a great shock for Europe. We are watching this. It is clear that what is happening and the actions announced by President Trump on the international arena are a reflection of the competition. We have already discussed the latest trends in the world economic development, when the People's Republic of China, based on the rules set by the West in the United States, has replaced its competitors in trade, economy, investment and infrastructure projects. The economic and financial indicators of the development of the People's Republic of China speak for themselves. And now we see how they are trying to fight this situation with sanctions, tariffs, and tariffs. Yes, of course, the United States wants to reach an agreement, but so far, this is happening in the absence of any common criteria, which until recently were the basis of the activities of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization. All these rules on which the world order should be based are crossed out. It is a game of who is stronger and who is right. We are all watching this. We can talk in more detail about how the vision is conceptually changing and how specific processes are developing in the field of world order during an interactive dialogue. But the consequences of this line are felt, of course, not only by the states of the global South and the global East, but also by the Western society. Could you not wave your hand, please? It is very distracting. But inside the Western society, crisis trends are accumulating. Greenland is an obvious example that everyone is talking about, and such discussions are developing around it. And it is difficult to imagine what could have happened earlier, including the prospects of NATO's preservation as a single Western military political bloc. We assume that if Western countries, speaking of Greenland, want to talk about concepts, it is their choice, it is their right. But we will engage with our partners, with all partners from the countries of the world's majority and Western countries that are interested in talking to Russia and discussing specific mutually beneficial projects. We will talk, of course, on the basis of principles of equality. We can say that we want to apply the universally accepted norms of international law, but the main thing here is equality, mutual respect, and the search for a balance of interests. These are completely inappropriate approaches when it comes to international law, whatever you call it, rules, international law, whatever. These principles of equality simply cannot be abolished. Yes, of course, if there is equal dialogue, the one who has more resources will have more influence on the result. Nevertheless, we need to achieve a result that, as I have already said, will necessarily represent a balance of interests. Russia will defend its interests consistently, not claiming anyone's legal rights, but also not allowing it to freely deal with our legal rights. Our foreign policy course, which is based on the strategy and concept of foreign policy, approved by the President in March 2023, assumes a decisive defense of the vital interests of our country, our people, the creation of favorable external conditions for sustainable development within the Russian Federation. And of course, the most important thing is the principled actions to further strengthen national sovereignty. Let me remind you that significant and serious contributions in this context, in the context of strengthening national sovereignty, were made in 2020 by amendments to the Russian Constitution. As I have already said, we are ready to work with everyone who is responsible for mutuality and is willing to negotiate honestly, on an equal basis, without blackmail, without pressure. And this is well known to everyone. If we talk about the theses that the West used in relation to the Russian Federation last year, then the so-called isolation of Russia, which in my opinion is no longer a secret to anyone, did not take place, no matter what our unfriendly people said about it. The event dedicated to the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War, the parade on the Red Square, a large number of foreign guests. We appreciate all those who personally took part in these celebrations or sent a special delegation. And of course, speaking of the Second World War and its consequences, we must mention the similar events that took place in Beijing on September 3rd, in the event of the defeat of military Japan and the end of the Second World War. These two events clearly demonstrated that the overwhelming number of countries does not want to forget the memory, lessons, and history of the Second World War. And this is a very important conclusion from the past year.